We have in our studios here in Abuja, Mr. Oscar Obi, who is a legal practitioner. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, I don't know what your perspective is on, the matters that have happened so far on the Justice Onnoghen's trial. I mean, the Asset Declaration controversy and the subsequent trial at the CCT. We have seen lawyers disagree. The NBA seems to be categorical on, that due process is not being followed. You're a lawyer. Do you agree with the NBA?
Thank you, my friend. First and foremost, in our Constitution, there are separation of powers. There are three arms of government. I think that this foundation is very necessary for people to have a basic understanding of what the system looks like. The judiciary has the primary responsibility of interpreting our laws. Interpretation. Why the National Assembly is saddled with the responsibility of making laws and amending laws. That said, the judiciary, with its primary responsibility of interpretation, now, this case of CJN and the order made by the CCT, as you said, came up. We believe strictly, we lawyers believe, as ministers in the Temple of Justice, we believe strictly to the adherence of rule of law. Rule of law apparently means that the law is prevalent, the law is above every other person. Every person is below the law. Then, the CJN issue, going by the provision of that same Constitution, Section 350 of our Constitution, gave CCT absolute powers to the exclusion of no other court. The CCT, in its exercise of these powers, do not and cannot entertain orders from court or pronouncements from court once they are within the confinements of their dictates.
What I understand is that the CCT is at par with the High Court and, say, the National Industrial Court, but that it can take suits from the appeal court. I mean, that's what they claim, that they would not take judgments from courts of coordinate jurisdiction.
Yeah, in the hierarchy of courts.
Yes, that they can only take from the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court. But you seem to be saying that they cannot take from any court.
Absolutely.
That includes the Appeal Court and the Supreme Court?
Yes, that's in the hierarchy of courts. We have hierarchy of courts.
Yes.
And that's how precedence also applies. The CCT enjoys equal jurisdiction with the Federal High Court, with the Court of Appeal, with the State High Court, and other courts like the NIC, National Industrial Court. Appeal lies from this court straight to the Court of Appeal.
So it means they can take orders from the Court of Appeal?
Yes. Orders, final orders from the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court. But if an order of Court of Appeal is not in tandem with the order of the Supreme Court, naturally, that of the Supreme Court takes prevalence.
Now, before we even go to the CCT, because some people will say that perhaps that is not even in dispute. What is in dispute is the process that has seen the Chief Justice being dragged before the CCT. They believe that due process wasn't followed, that when the CCB wrote, citing discrepancies in what was declared, and the Chief Justice said he forgot, that what ought to have happened is, to say then he should do the needful, not refer him to the CCT.
But this is a very simple matter. If the process is breached, as alleged, what do? You approach the court for redress. It's left for the court to say, no, this thing is not and void because the process is wrong. Do you need to take the laws into your own hands? Who determines whether the process is wrong or right?
This is you lawyers who are saying that the process is, lay people don't know much about this. No. It is you lawyers who go to court based on what the law says. Now, the NBA as a body, I don't think will be backing what is not in the laws. They say that the statutes have not been followed.
But what will the NBA do? first and foremost, NBA is the body of lawyers in Nigeria. We all belong to the NBA. And the NBA, to the best of, in my personal opinion, NBA, I would say, is more or less dealing in an issue that's already sub judice.
What about before it became sub judice? Before the Chief Justice was suspended?
That's what I'm saying. If the process was wrong as alleged, that was, of course, the NBA didn't say anything before the CJN was suspended. Their statement came after the CJN was suspended.
What do you make of this bench warrant now that has been issued for the arrest of the CJN?
The truth is that whoever that must have advised the Honorable CJN, the learned CJN, not to appear in the CCT, it was ill-advised, honestly. I would say this because the CCT enjoys quasi-criminal jurisdiction, and its proceedings are guided by the Criminal Justice Act, the Criminal Code and Acts. So by such provisions and the powers it has absolute powers to issue bench warrant. Do you get my point? Section 350, one other provision of the ACJA, Administration of Criminal Justice Act, states before anything is done, that's section 350, before anything is done, plea must be taken. Plea of the defendant must be taken.
But his plea has not been taken.
That is the point. His presence is needed for his plea to be taken.
But when we look at what has happened in the court, I mean, we see the lawyers, defending the CJN, appearing in court. First of all, challenging the jurisdiction of the Code of Conduct Tribunal.
Yep.
And then the client wasn't in court. When the Code of Conduct Tribunal ruled that indeed they had jurisdiction, they had taken the matter to the Court of Appeal. To the Court of Appeal.
Yeah.
And that matter has not been heard, but the CCT insists on continuing to sit. Is that right?
You know what CCT is just asking? There should be an arraignment. Let him take his plea. All other applications that are made before the CCT will be heard.
Can you take a plea when preliminaries have not been sorted?
That is that's the most important thing. Arraignment was meant to be heard, was to be done. And plea has not been taken.
Can you take a plea in a court that you're not sure if it really has jurisdiction over the matter upon which it is sitting?
The ACJ provision says plea comes first. Plea must come first. Then any application can now lie.
Has the CJN been invited? We do know that in certain circumstances, the judge gives, it is the judge's discretion. I'd like to see your client in court or the defendant in court by so-and-so date. If I do not see the person, I might issue a bench warrant or I might issue an arrest for his, a warrant for his arrest. We have not seen that in this case. Is the CCT being hasty?
No. Several invitations, I'm sure, several applications have been made to the Honorable CJN to appear in court. Yeah, through his lawyers, through whatever means. And as was reliably mentioned by the prosecution, he has been evading private service of court process. You get it? So these are not difficult issues. Most of all, we lawyers understand this process.
But given that we're looking at the CJN, I mean, even though he's been suspended now, someone in that capacity, don't you think that we should give benefit of the doubt?
That is where the matter becomes very sensitive. Because considering the exalted office the CJN occupies, I think, and being the foremost judicial officer in the country, I think he should lead by example, by obedience to showing a total obedience to the law, total submission to the institution of the court. It takes nothing out of the Honorable CJN to appear in court. It takes nothing. When I say it takes absolutely nothing. And also lay a good precedent. Because precedent is very important. Tomorrow someone else can come up with several frivolous excuses not to appear before the CCT.
Let's talk about the principle of separation of powers, because you started your argument on that premise.
Yeah.
Some people have argued that the manner in which he's been suspended, doesn't follow the principle of separation of powers. They believe that the executive arm of government have exercised powers not assigned to it. What do you say?
What I said that the president suspended the CJN. His suspension is premised on the order of CCT.
You have heard the orders of the CCT. I mean, you've heard lawyers. I haven't seen the order. But lawyers have argued that the CCT did not order that the president suspend him. The CCT ordered that he step aside Did you also, see that controversy?
Remember, people, this is suspension. This is not termination of, this is not a removal. This is mainly suspension.
Even in suspension.
Okay, the court gave, the CCT gave various suggestions to the extended suggestions to the president in its order, and said, in the interest of justice, and for the office not to, for there not to exist a vacuum in the office, why this matter is before me, independence of this matter, he recommends that CJN be suspended to allow him answer these allegations before the court, before the CCT. This is just purely very straightforward.
Some people have argued that
it's a recommendation to the president.
The manner in which this case has gone, from the rapid response we first of all saw, I mean the query, the response, the transfer of the case to the CCT, the supersonic speed with which all of this went, they already argue that there is some seeming bias against the person of the CJN. How do you perceive this underlying? I mean, I know you only argue on legal terms, but when you look at the circumstances surrounding certain things, yes, what do you say to it?
Honestly, for the fact that, remember, you all should be mindful of the office you're talking about. This is the office of the CJN. This is the judiciary. It is not like every other, it's not like all other political offices like that of a state governor, minister, be it president, vice president, or senator. This is a man that determines whether you live or you die. This is an institution that should be sacred and sanctimonious.
Isn't that why we should be very careful in terms of the
absolutely. That's why I am of the view that rule of law, strict observance of rule of law, and certain procedures must be observed.
From what you have seen, from the start of this case, from the start of the controversy till now, do you think the rule of law has been followed? The rule of law has been followed?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Honestly. The president did the appropriate time.
You are saying that without any...
Without any form of bias. Do you know why I say that? If whatever that happened, if whatever action that is being taken or is not taken is against, assuming without consent, assuming that I am in the person of the CJN, if I am wronged, and I believe I'm wronged, the process that led to my suspension wasn't followed or was improper. There is standard procedure to seek redress to this.